Imagine that you have just discovered a new planet. It's in something like a habitable zone around its star, and this is critical, you have determined that it's a super Earth, or maybe Earth, as opposed to a sub-Neptune or a water world. Sub-Neptune, water world, well, they might have habitable moons or something on them, but we are not thinking about those as places where things could live on the surface. So you found all the right things. It's got a temperature that's suitable for liquid water. It's got a solid surface. What do you do next? You can probably guess the answer by now because we've talked about this a lot in this class. The next thing you want to do is get a spectrum of that object. How are you going to get a spectrum of that object? Well, there are two ways to do it. It's very difficult if you have the star here and the planet here, and you just want to isolate the light from that planet away from the star and get the reflectance spectrum, the sunlight reflecting off here, reflecting towards you. Very hard thing to do because that star is so close and so bright, particularly if we're talking about something in a habitable zone, an Earth-like distance. Really, really, really hard. Also hard, but significantly less hard, is to use that technique we've talked about, a transit. Wait for, or probably discover the planet by the fact that it transits over the cross of its host star, and then do a spectrum of the entire event, the entire star plus planet, or star minus planet light in this case, and look at the transmission spectrum. This is what you saw demonstrated by Professor Knudsen in her lectures, and you could do the same thing for an Earth-sized object around a sun-sized star. Well, not today. You couldn't do it today, but you could do it with the next giant space telescope that's going into space, the James Webb Space Telescope that's supposed to launch somewhere around 2018. James Webb Space Telescope will be able to get a spectrum of this event. You compare the spectrum when the planet is in the middle of the star to a spectrum when the planet is not, and you get how much light is being removed by that planet, and you get a spectrum of that light. You get the light that shines through the planet coming towards you. This is not only perfectly feasible, this will be done with the James Webb Space Telescope when it goes off into space. This is something that is indeed coming up in less than half a decade away. So it's pretty exciting times to see what might happen. You get a spectrum, and then what? Well, you look at it and you try to figure out what's going on. Let's look at some examples of what you might see and what might be going on. Here are 6 models of what the Earth would have looked like if you could have looked at it at 6 separate times in its history. And sorry, you can't read this very well. This is a spectrum from 5 microns right here up to 20 microns right here. These numbers should start to mean something to you at this point. This is the region where the bulk of the transmission, the thermal emission of the Earth comes from in this region. This is where the greenhouse gases are causing the biggest problems. This is the same spectral region, 5 up to 20 on this side. And look, so what we see. Epoch 0 is the earliest stage of the Earth's history, the very beginning when the atmosphere would have been dominated by CO2. You see a little bit of water, barely, a little bit of water here, barely, but mostly you see this big, broad absorption due to CO2. The CO2 would have been from things like outgassing of volcanoes. It's very similar to what the atmosphere of Mars looks like, except for it's a little thicker, a lot thicker than the atmosphere of Mars. What happens over time? Well, we're in the Archean period. In the Archean period, there are these archaea, these microbes that they're not involved in oxygen photosynthesis. They're involved in other reactions that lead to their methanogenesis, other things. And you, as the atmosphere builds up from those microbes over here in stage 1, you start to see signatures of methane coming up in here, and still the CO2 dominates. Up to stage 2, the methane is continuing to come in, and you can really see its signature right here. Very clear that you have methane in this atmosphere, just like that thought that methane must have been coming from microbes on Mars. Certainly microbes on the Earth early on would have made this very clear signature. The transition from Epoch 2 to Epoch 3 is an epic transition, and that's because this is now the rise of the oxygen-producing bacteria. And do you see the oxygen? No. Oxygen actually doesn't have any spectral features in this region here. But what does? Ozone. I don't know if you can read that right there. That is ozone. We have a lot of ozone in the Earth's atmosphere. For the most part, it's confined up in the top of the stratosphere. We have some around here in the form of sort of smog, which we don't like, but up in the stratosphere there's a lot of ozone. That ozone comes from oxygen molecules. which are very abundant, as you know, photon comes in and destroys an oxygen molecule, leaving 2 oxygen atoms, and that oxygen atom quickly combines with another oxygen molecule and makes O3. The fact that we have O3 in the atmosphere and the fact that you can see it is one of the strongest indicators that O2 is present in the atmosphere. And as you watch, as the oxygen rises, starting from epoch 3, going to epoch 4, going to the present day, you see the change from CO2 dominated with a lot of methane to oxygen coming in, CO2 starting to go away, methane still there very strong. Methane is now nearly gone. CO2 is much more relaxed, and this is the signature. If we saw this, we would have a signature of an oxygen-dominated atmosphere. What would that tell us? I think it would make people very excited. I think people would immediately announce that they had discovered a world that was not only habitable, but inhabited by some sort of oxygen-creating microbes. And then the arguments would start, because there are a lot of complexities to these. Are there geochemical ways of making these molecules? Are there some sorts of global reactions? Possibly. If we saw something as clear as this, I think maybe we really would be allowed to jump up and down. I suspect the first sorts of things we see will not be clear-cut signatures of oxygen, but maybe there'll be these signatures of a CO2-dominated atmosphere with perhaps some methane in it. Methane could well be a strong signature of a microbial source. Or we know that methane is produced in certain geochemical cycles. In fact, methane is one of those things that the microbes at the vents in the bottom of the ocean like to live off of. Methane can be produced by the breakdown of rocks in a process called serpentinization, and methane is released. So there could be a lot of reasons that there's methane in through here. You know, if we got a spectrum that looked like this, like a very rich methane atmosphere and a CO2 atmosphere, again, people would jump up and down. But again, people would probably try to be very skeptical and see if there were other explanations that were possible. And there may well be. It's not a very easy thing to look at a spectrum of the atmosphere and definitively discern that the spectrum, the gases in the atmosphere, must be biological. What else might you do? Well, people have talked about, rather than looking in the infrared where most of the thermal emission is coming, look instead in the visible part of the spectrum. The visible part of the spectrum would just be sunlight reflected off the surface of the planet. And there is one very distinct feature that you see in reflected sunlight off the surface of the Earth. And that distinct feature is caused by plants. It's caused by chlorophyll. What do we know about plants? Plants are green. Why are they green? If you looked at the reflectance spectrum of a leaf of a plant, what you would see is that there is around half of a micron, which is a good spot, which is where your eye is very sensitive, where there's a lot of sunlight. The leaf reflects a moderate amount of light. And then there's this big spot where no light is reflected from the leaf. And then in the infrared, our eyes can't see it, but our cameras can easily see it. Suddenly, the reflectance shoots up. The reflectance shoots up because leaves reflect all of the infrared photons, nearly all of these infrared photons that hit it. Now, what's going on? This region in through here, where no light is reflected from leaves, is the spot where the chlorophyll is collecting the photons and using it to make energy. Leaves are very efficient at collecting all the photons in this region. But right here at around 0.7 microns, just beyond where our eyes are sensitive, the chlorophyll can't use those photons. The wavelengths of those photons are too big, and so they can't use them effectively. And so they completely reject them. They reflect them off of them. Nobody knows exactly why. Maybe letting them enter the leaf would cause too much heat. Who knows? But in any case, it's a very dramatic signature of a leaf, of a plant, of a forest, of a planet covered in vegetation. It's a potentially very interesting way to look for something like vegetation on a planet, because there are a couple things about it. One is it's a very dramatic spectral signature. There are really no minerals that could mimic something like that really have this dramatic red edge here like this. What's more, you might expect it to change seasonally. Certainly if you look at the Earth, there's a stronger vegetative signature in northern summer because the north has more continents than the south does, and you could see that change with season. There's one really good reason why it's not a very good thing to go actually looking for. It's because we have no idea if microbes on other planets would be photosynthetic, much less if they would use the same chlorophyll pigments that plants here use. There's no specific physical reason why plants have to use this one very specific region of the spectrum. Now, you might say, okay, if there's some sort of photosynthesis there, you'll see that same sort of thing somewhere, maybe if not right here. And the answer is, maybe you might. I wouldn't want to count on it, but I certainly would want to take a look. And in fact, I think this is really the key point of looking for actual life and the effects of actual life on other planets. Assuming we're going to see one of these things, much like the history of the Earth, or something like this, that's something like the Earth, those assumptions are clearly very bad assumptions. Even being a little bit more generous and saying, okay, we're not going to assume the spectrum looks exactly the same, but maybe we'll assume similar sorts of atmospheres. We can then make computer models of what those atmospheres would look like if they were around hotter stars or cooler stars, because that will certainly change a lot of things. Even then, I think that's just not a very good way to go about it. I think the right way to go about it is our general feeling of exploration. We do not know what the atmospheres of terrestrial planets in habitable zones will be like. Let's go find out. When we find out, I suspect that we will end up throwing away most of these models that we've created, even though I think it's a great thing to have done it. Oh, and I should have mentioned where this model came from. And I think these models are great, and making these models is great for generally guiding our thinking, but in the end, our exploration will simply require finding out what's there and seeing if we can make sense of it.